2, 1, and we are live.
Hi, folks. Welcome to our last YouTube Live of the 2025. Hope you all had a wonderful Christmas. And anticipating, and fully plan to have a fantastic 2026. So tonight's topic is Ask Me Anything, I guess. So as soon as you got a question, Frick, throw it at me.
I'm still getting them ready.
All right. I like to tell what we're doing when there's a few more people on, but I'll just tell you real quickly. This is one of the ways that we raise money for a Purple Heart Project, which is something we do 6 times a year, where we bring in 7 at a time combat wounded vets from all over the world, and we treat them to a 6-day, very intense hand tool woodworking session. We house them, we feed them. Everyone gets to take home in US dollars about $4,000 worth of premium tools. And thanks to the Bench Brigade, Jack Lane and his crew, we have a workbench built and delivered to their home. And I think we've delivered over 200 to date. We've had about 270 soldiers go through our program. So there'll be 42 more this year. I just had one of the guys that is coming in April just showed up and was here for about an hour and helped me unload the van. We just got back from Calais. Ready, Frick?
Yep.
Fire away.
All right. They're all coming from the chat today. None were submitted in advance.
How come?
I don't know. So this one is from WFD Shroot.
Hello, WF.
He says, if you use a plane to flatten a board, how do you arrive at the proper thickness?
Well, there's a sequence very similar to the way you do it in a jointer or power tools. First thing you have to do, I won't do it just because it's a little bit longer than what I want, but I'll use it as a visual aid. So you're going to take your rough board. Thank you, Ken. You would give me one full of knots. That's the reason I'm not doing it. First thing you have to do is get this to sit flat. So I would go through, I would take so the board is almost always going to be cupped. As it dries, those rings that you see have a tendency to want to straighten out. So I need this to sit flat before I start working on it, because if not, it's simply going to flex under the weight of the plane and pop back up, so you never get it flat. So do you see how that rolls side to side? If I decide to dress this side first, I'm going to take off the entire middle section, which is a lot of work. If I do this side, because the board is something like that, I can usually just take a little material off the outside edges, and it'll eventually sit flat so that it doesn't move. I need it to be stable before I start working on it. So leading up to your question, how do you determine the thickness? So once this is parked, doesn't move, doesn't flex, doesn't bounce, I would go in and I'd make this side perfectly flat. I'd clean it up first, and then I would go in, I'd switch planes, and I would use either my jointer or my 5.5, depending how big it is, and I would get that smooth. And then I would get out my winding sticks that used to be down there. I want to find my winding sticks. Ken, can you grab me some winding sticks? They're in that. I put some in that little cabinet right there. The little one right, the prototype. Yeah, on the door, on that little one. Yeah, perfect. So I use winding sticks to determine when this is nice and flat. And winding sticks are just 2 long sticks made out of stable wood, and they are designed so that they'll help you spot any wind. Thank you. Or twist. So here's, these are made by, we used to make them in our shop, and now I employ Dave Tennant over in Nova Scotia. He makes them for us. So that's the back one. It has a center dot, and it has triangles, inlays on the corners. You would sit that on the back. Now when you're doing this, you want to make sure it doesn't swivel like that. It needs to be sitting flat so there's no high spot in the middle. You take this one on this end, and you sight down the top. And as you sight down the top, if there's any wind or twist, it'll show up, because you'll see more of this white corner than you do that white corner. And you keep working it until when you look along the top, both edges are parallel. At that point, you're done. You're done with that surface.
But thickness, he's talking thickness, you're talking.
I'm leading up to it.
Okay.
So then you're going to take your marking gauge and you set it for whatever thickness you want. So typically out of a 4/4 board, you want to get 3/4. So I would set that for 3/4 of an inch. And this is my finished smooth side. Referencing off of that, I would make a mark all the way around the board. Flip it over like this, and I would start planing. And I would plane everywhere until I come down to that line all the way around. And at that point, I now have a board that is uniform thickness, 3/4 of an inch from one end to the other. That's the way you do it. I'm just going to turn my phone off so it doesn't ding the whole time we're talking. Go ahead, Frick, next. We've been experimenting this month of December, doing YouTube Shorts. YouTube recently, when did they do it, Frick?
What?
When did YouTube switch to the 3-minute short?
Well,
This
it's
year?
been like that for a while. It depends on your account. Like when you first start out, you only get a certain amount of time, and then it increases as your subscribers increase. But
So we can do a short up to 3 minutes. So we decided to try to post one a day for the month of December, and see how it goes, see what the reaction is. And all the markers are up. So we're going to keep doing it. Let me know what you think, and I would love to hear suggestions on what you would like us to do. You can't get a whole lot in 3 minutes. So what I typically would do is I'll take one aspect of a procedure and focus on that so that you can somewhat adequately teach it in that short time frame. We did one, somebody asked a question the other day. One of the videos I did is my top favorite hand tools. And somebody said, okay, well, what do you do with this small router plane? So in 3 minutes, I was able to take this board that I had prepared. I showed them how I use it to get the depth of a dado uniform. I use it to get a tenon perfectly matched so that the sides are parallel and it fits as flawlessly as possible. Or I use it also to make sure that my rabbet is equal depth all the way. As an example. So I'll tell you what, if you give us a good idea, and we do one, I'll give you a big shout out on there. And thank you profusely. So make sure you put it in the chat and put your name on and your idea. Okay, Frick, sorry, go ahead.
this one's from Ben in the chat.
Hey, Ben.
He says, can I flatten my Norton India oil stone with my Sharpening wrapping plate without damaging the lapping plate?
Well, I can't answer that except for this. Your Sharpening lapping plate is designed to flatten your Sharpening stones. And they tell you not to use it on anything less than or coarser than 500 grit. The Sharpening lapping plate is $350+. That's an expensive lapping plate for something that only does one thing. So I wouldn't experiment on anything other than what it's designed for. Sharpening's 500 and above. In fact, I would never use it even on the 500. If they say don't go below 500, I stay on 1,000. So my answer to that is common sense in my head says don't use it on anything. It's too expensive of a piece of kit to experiment with. But if you want something that I think you could be fine with, how long were we without them, Ken? The diamond stones?
Oh, a few months.
Oh, it was longer than that.
A few months?
The ones that we just got in?
Oh, the premium ones?
Yeah, the premiums.
Oh,
Were we out for like 5 or 6 months?
probably.
So we sell a double-sided diamond stone. It's got a 1,000 grit on one side, a 300 grit on the other. Been doing it since 2010 when I found out about it. And company that was doing them switched manufacturers. So we were okay up until about 2017 or 18, and then they were just terrible. They weren't flat. They were delaminating. Got a hold of the guy that originally had told me about it and found out that the company had gone behind his back while he was in the hospital dying and switched manufacturers, and that was the problem. So he got us back on with the original manufacturer, and we're okay again. But as time was going, we wanted them to be within a thou and a half. And some of them were coming in 3-4 thou out of flat, which was not suitable for what we were doing. So after multiple, and then the company changed hands again. After multiple times of telling them we're not going to sell these anymore if you cannot satisfy what we want. So they said, okay, we'll retool, we'll start from scratch, and we'll promise to give you better than the thou. So we waited at least 6 months, it could have been longer, and they just came in about a month ago. And Brandon takes every one of them out of the box, puts them on the granite reference plate and checks them. And out of the first 50 that he did, I think only 2 or 3 weren't as good as a thou or less. They were maybe a thou and a half. So we sell them as being within 1 thou of flat front to back. So, and we dropped the price. They were 180, we were able to drop the price to 150. So if you want a really good reference plate for starting the process, because you start on the 1000, and lapping your ceramic stones with the 300 or your other ones, that is the kit to get. The kit to get. How's that for a rhyme? Next, Frick.
All right, couple quick questions from Craig.
I got a special shout out I'm going to do about midway through today. A gentleman that just donated just over $7,000 to cover one vet through our program, and the reason behind it was quite a story. I'll share that with you a little later.
All right, couple questions from Craig. First, he wants to know.
Craig?
Yeah, he wants to know.
You make it sound like I know Craig.
I don't know.
Well,
You know Craig?
Are you just? This isn't a follow up to a question we've already had?
No. He just has a couple quick ones. The first one is, do you have any dates for your trip to the UK?
No, but we have a meeting early in January with Classic Hand Tools to settle on that.
Okay, and he also wants to know if you could do a video on how to repair a wood hinge box when the hinge breaks.
Oh yeah, I've only had that happen a few times. In fact, I think. No, that's not it. I've got one that's been kicking around here for a long time, and it fell off of there, way up there. Somebody slammed the door and it fell down on concrete and broke. I did repair one time. It was a larger box, and it was. I'll tell you how long ago it was. We were moving back from Utah, which would have been 1989. And something got piled on top of it, and it crushed it. It actually split the lid in half, right down in the middle. And it was a dovetailed box. It had I still have it. Dovetails were left proud, and I somehow managed to take that apart and reroute the part that was the part of the hinge that was still glued, and redid it. So I saved it. But oh wow, that's a lot of work. I would really weigh whether or not it was worth it, meaning could I build another box in less time than fixing that one? Let me think on that one. Next, Frick.
This is from Patrick Wilkerson.
Hey, Patrick.
About how many hours do you have tied up into your tool storage cabinet?
Which one? One behind me?
Well,
Or the one that we're selling?
well,
Ask him.
say both. Guess both.
Patrick, I got more tool cabinets around here than you can shake a stick at. I got the one behind me. I got the one the prototype I just had Ken go out and get the winding sticks out of. We've got the one that we're selling, we're trying to sell, and I've got my one that I use over on when I'm teaching the classes. Ask me specifically which one, and I'll tell you. Next, Frick.
Next one is from Paul in the chat. What
Hey, Paul.
brand of marking gauge do you feel is the best, and what brand marking knife do you recommend?
What brand of marking gauge?
Yeah, and marking knife do you recommend?
Okay, so this is an opportunity for self-promotion, but I'll give you the background behind the self-promotion. If there was something out there that was fantastic, why would I turn around and make one? I had no interest in making the second best. But the problem was, what was out there was not satisfactory. So we had to start making our own. So when you ask that question, what's the best marking gauge? This is the best marking gauge. What are the features about it? I'll just give you some quick ones. The face is flat. Some of them, the face you buy, some of the ones, other brands you buy, the face is not flat. So when you try to use it, it's moving like this because of that. So face is flat. We put a flat spot on there so it does not roll off the bench. If it rolls off the bench and that cutter's out, I guarantee you it's going to break the cutter. They're just fragile. So flat spot right there. I shape it on the lathe. We turn, even though it's made out of metal, we turn them on the lathe so that it's nice and comfortable. I hold it like that. And we're actually, this is fairly large diameter. Jake's been working with Chris on possibly making that a toggle. I had the prototype here, but I don't know where it is. Instead of a round knob, a toggle so you can get a little more torque on it. We make sure that this is countersunk so that when you put it away, that'll sit down below the surface so it doesn't get damaged. We also make sure that these, we actually designed this cutter to work well with hardwood and softwood and to be hard enough that it'll stand up. But we sharpen these to within an inch of their life. If it's not sharp, it doesn't work. It has to go in and slice that wood. It can't crush fibers. And the nice thing about these is we actually make, how many different cutters do we have, Ken? We've got the 5/8 diameter, the 1/2 inch diameter, the 7/16, and the little 3/8, and the mortise gauge. So if you don't want to spring for another marking gauge, you can just buy that part, stores in a little plastic tube, and then when it comes time to kneading it, you just take that one out and slip that one in. Or in this case, this is the one, this is a small diameter, it's 3/8, and what I use that for is if I'm cutting a mortise and there's some dirt in the bottom, I just drop it down like that and we go side to side, and that'll dig off all those little bumps. It's a lot easier than getting the chisel in there to do it. And this is stout enough that it won't break, and it's a small diameter. So that's the reason why we use that one. So my own brand is the one that I recommend for those reasons. Now, what was the other half of that question, Frick?
Marking knife.
So you're not, I'm pretty sure you're not talking about our dovetail marking knife with the sawtooth blade. Boys. I'll show you what we have. Yeah, I wonder where that is. I'll spend a couple seconds here seeing if I can find. I've got some other marking knives made by other companies. I don't have all these drawers finished to where they have set purposes, so I can't find it. I started off with this. So way back, oh my, getting old. In 1985, I started cutting dovetails in 1983, and I was infatuated with doing this perfect. I was a nut that way. So I kept trying to make every part, every tool, and every part of the process more precise. And it came to a point where the knife was the problem. Because sometimes if you don't use the right knife, it will wander, it'll follow the grain. And if it follows the grain, it'll go away from the pin that you're trying to trace. Or if it goes the other way, it'll go in and it'll cut part of the pin. Now you've got part of the pin missing. Tail, sorry, I should have said. So I had found an old Stanley retractable, looked just like this. And I had shaped the blade. I had shaped the blade so that it wasn't terribly sharp, so that it wouldn't, when you're doing an end grain, it's not like when you're marking across. You know, I said how sharp your marking gauge needs to be so that you sever the fibers. Marking the face grain is a lot different than marking the end grain. So I made this thing to the perfect shape that I wanted. It was wide enough down here that when you were reaching down in there, you had enough surface area that you could feel it laying against the side of the tail. Customized that, made it, worked great. We only had one. And then one day something happened and it broke. But I had lots of people ask me, where do you get that? Where do you get that? So I had IBC make a knife. It's made out of metal, it's 2 parts, that looked exactly like that old Stanley. He made these blades specifically for me so that it would repeat exactly what I had. And we used that right up until 2014 when we came up with an even better way of transferring tails to pins using the sawtooth blade, where the knife is the exact size as the blade on the dovetail saw. And instead of having a knife mark in the pin board, you now literally have a saw kerf that you make using that little saw blade on there. So instead of setting your dovetail saw there and trying to figure out where do I need to be, you've got a kerf that you can literally set your saw right into, and that's where you start. So as far as if you're just using it for other marking, I actually use that little Tajima. I mean, I know everybody makes a marking knife. I've never found one that I thought, oh, this is fantastic. But these little Tajimas, they're nice and light. You need a new blade, you just snap that little piece off and you've got a nice sharp blade again. So that's the one I use. We sell those as well. We sell what I use. And of course I use what we sell. But our whole process for the last 15 years has been responding to people asking the question, Rob, where can I get that? So we go hunting down. And a lot of times we weren't big enough for companies to even bother with us, but as that's grown, now they've come around. And speaking of which, people always ask about my Bessie clamps. Text Jake and see if he's got word back. You know what I'm about to ask, right? Jake, respond and tell me where we are with these. So this is the Bessie Tradesman. And if you go into any hardware store or woodcraft store, you can buy Bessie Tradesman. These are the expensive ones. There's the big one, there's the medium-sized one. But when it comes to the small ones like that, any store you go into in North America, this is what you're going to find. Looks the same. Looks can be deceiving. It's not the same. This is the El Cheapo brand. Instead of having a nice solid cup like that, I don't know if you can see it from that far away, I don't have a cameraman tonight, it's got a hollow cup, which leaves a ring on your work. Instead of having 6 little serrated surfaces for it to grab, it only has 2. Instead of having nice Acme threads that work nice and smooth, it's got this junk. Anyway, I badgered these people for, it was more than 5 years. And finally, about a year ago, they said, fine, you can buy them. So we brought in 500 and they disappeared quick. So we ordered another 1,000 of these and I think 500 of the longer ones, the 8-inch ones, these are the 4. And they were supposed to be due right now. So sometime in the next couple of weeks, hopefully they'll go up on the site. But these are my most used clamps. They're so nice, easy to work with, good quality. And by the way, we tape every one before we send it out, so you'll benefit from that, being able to grip it. Bessie Tradesman, by far the best clamps. I don't think he even asked about that, but I told you. Next, Rick.
Patrick clarified that it is the tool cabinet behind you.
Behind me? Oh.
How many hours?
Not even done yet.
How many?
How many hours? How many hours?
How many hours? Well, the story's going to take a minute to tell. When we started doing the online workshop, we just did hand tools only. And about 6 months into it, I realized that people were at home trying to do hand tool related stuff, cutting dovetails, planing wood on the end of their table saw or on a workmate or some other make do. And I said, these guys need a workbench. But so anyway, so we designed and built a workbench. And then the next thing is they started asking for a tool cabinet, and I needed a tool cabinet. So the first thing we did is we did a model up, a scale model, similar to, would you hand me that scale model at the end of the joiner, please? I always, when I was trying to earn a living building furniture, and I want your opinion on something too, by the way, I would always build a scale model. And if it had dovetails in it, I'd cut the dovetails. So there's a desk that we're working on. So we built a scale model of this. The nice thing about a scale model is you can take pictures of it, and as long as there isn't anything in the background that would give it away, that'll look like the real thing. So scale model, you play with the scale model, which, I mean, you tweak it, relatively inexpensive, right? I mean, there wouldn't be a board foot of material there. So if you screw something up, you can start over without tremendous expense. Once we did that, we decided to do a mock-up out of relatively inexpensive materials, at least back then. And then fill in all the spots and then live with it. So this is all recorded, by the way. You can see all this on the online workshop. If you're a combat wounded vet, you get that for free. Everybody else gets to pay. So we built the mock-up, and then we'd go back to doing whatever we were doing, building some other piece of furniture. And every 6 months or so, we'd come back in and we would tweak it, meaning I actually found out it was better if something was here instead of there. So this has been a long process, now that I think about it. 15 years, coming up on 10 years, 12 years, 14 years, whatever. Once I was settled and I liked what I had and it worked well with me, then we would do the finished one. So we broke it up into 6 pieces. So I think the first one we did was over here. So this is where all of my shooting boards or bench hooks or anything that's big fits into these slots. So this one was all done. The finished material was mahogany and bird's eye maple. And then the next one we did was the center section. And these were, again, all the drawers were made out of mahogany, and there's no bird's eye in this, but mahogany, in this case, aspen. And each drawer has all of the stuff in it, all the stuff that we need. The next section we did was over here. So both of these have pullouts. This one has all of my layout materials, except for the winding sticks. I don't know where they are. And then this drawer has very specific tools, all French fit, meaning there's a spot for every tool. So when I open up like that, I can say, Jake, where's my wrench? Because it's missing. My plane's down there. This one is more or less just a spot for oddball stuff. So that's in there. Then we did this one. And this is the one where we keep all the planes. Didn't want to waste the space, so behind every plane, there are slots that utilize that space that would otherwise be wasted. And there's 12 of these little drawers, and each one of these drawers has very specific tools. So if I want to cut dovetails, I can literally take this with me to the bench, and all my dovetail tools are in here. Each one, almost all of them are like that. There's a few I'm still working on. And this pullout has my my saws, my panel saws, and my 3/4 saws. The next one we're going to do, I think, is this center section. This one is ready. So underneath here are the carving chisels or some of the other chisels that I don't use as often. And then my saw till has all of my saws and my marking gauge, my squares. So I like that. So this section is ready to build next. And then the final section will be over here. And this has pullouts for all of the, this is all of my rasps. These are all my screwdrivers. These are all my various files. This door closes in. You got an open cavity where you can put everything. And this has all my screws. So, can't change it now. I've been living with it.
You said you wanted an opinion on that or something.
Oh, yes. Well, you got another question, Frick? So, and then I'll ask them for an opinion.
Yep. Sorry.
What?
Why don't you use metric?
Why don't I use metric?
Yeah.
Because Canada converted to metric at about the time that I was living in the United States. So I lived in the U.S. from December of 1980. I moved home from, I graduated from BYU and moved home in the spring of 1989. And it was during that period that Canada did that conversion. So I opted out. And there's a really good, is Luther on?
Yep.
Luther, tell them in the chat if it's the book that Jim Tolpin wrote talking about how Imperial measurements are more user-friendly in the shop than metric. I don't think it was by hand and by eye. But if there was a specific title, let them know in there, would you, so they can benefit from his thinking. Next, Rick.
All right, this one's from S.L. Hasebrook. Hopefully I'm saying that right.
SL.
Yeah. It's time to upgrade my hand chisels. Would you walk through your recommendations for a basic set to start my upgrade of your chisels?
Wow. These questions are so packed with potential sales, it's uncanny. All right, so chisels are, the interesting thing about chisels, if you think of every aspect of woodworking, whether you're a framer or a finished carpenter or a cabinet maker or a furniture maker or a pattern maker, everybody's going to use chisels. So you want a chisel that's, I think comfort is number one. It's got to be comfortable. It's got to be something you want to use because it's so comfortable in your hand. Number two, it needs to have edge retention. It's got to hold an edge. If it doesn't make much matter. And the shape, it has to be, if it's a dovetail chisel, well, no, it's not really a dovetail chisel, it's called a bench chisel or a beveled edge. And the bevels have to be on the edge, not on the top. So, again, I never came into this to be number two. We came into this to make the very best. What constitutes the very best? Well, with the experience that I had, working hand tools, and the experience that I gained from working with other experts in the field, think of Sam Malouf, Tay Frid, Alan Peters, Peter Korn, Silas Kaufman, Noel Robinson, all those guys. I knew what I liked. So I went to the people who could make them and said, this is what we need. So these are the chisels. So this is how I would start. Probably the most used chisel you're going to have is 1/4 inch. Now, one of the big advantages to these is the fact that you can take them apart. So unscrew the handle, and there's 4 parts to this chisel. So there's the blade, there's the ferrule, there's the cap and connector, and there's your handle. You can make your own handles if you want. You can make your handles out of pine if you want them nice and light, because you don't ever hit the actual wood. You can make them out of any material. But what's really nice is that when it comes to, your chisels must be prepared so the backs are flat. When you're doing that on your stone, it will lay, I don't want to put that on a coarse stone, that will lay perfectly flat on the stone. If you try to do this with chisels that aren't built this way, give you an example. Right here. Okay, so there's always a transition back here, and that goes into the socket. And the socket sits higher, or in this case, the socket sits lower, so you're working on your stone to flatten this, and if you accidentally, without even realizing it, move over too far, that lifts the blade up, and now you're wearing away the front, which is what you want to be flat. So the nice thing about ours is that when you lay that on there, you don't suffer that problem. And you can go through and easily prepare these. We check them. They have to be within 1/2 thou of being flat front to back. No belly, only a slight crown, so that your work is minimized. That you need to polish them up. So I would first have buy a 1/4 inch. The second one I would buy would be my 1/2 inch. And I'm telling you this based on what gets used the most. Just put this one back together. I actually like to put it in the vise and give it a really good twist to tighten them up. These were our 60-62 on the Rockwell scale, cryogenically treated A2, double tempered, blah, blah, blah. They'll hold an edge. And then the next would be 3/4. I actually use this as my burnisher for my scraper. That's why I have the tape wrapped around the tip. Amount of time that I put into making a burnisher. Only just look at this one day and say, well, I've already got a piece of steel that's highly polished. So there's the three that you're going to get that are going to get used the most. After that, I would add 1/8 of an inch, because you'll always be cursed when you're trying to get into that one spot that's just a little bit narrower than 1/4 of an inch, 1/8 of an inch. And then I would probably add a 1 inch. It's nice because the amount of surface area you have on there, there's stuff you can do with that the width really plays it well in your favor. Now, at this point, you can go 2 routes. One would be to do this. I'm a huge fan of the 17-degree chisels. So that's got a primary bevel of 17 degrees. Excels in anything soft. Pine, aspen, basswood, even poplar. So I would always have, if I'm going to work that type of a secondary wood, I would have 2 17-degree chisels, 1/4 inch and 1/2. You can't use these on hardwood. The edge will fold. There's no metal out there. Softwood only. The softest of softwood, but it cuts so clean in that stuff. It's addictive. You want to use it everywhere. The next chisel I would buy would be for doing half blind. So this is a half blind dovetail chisel. That allows you to get into each corner with one tool, and your line of force remains straight on, unlike a skew chisel, which has an angle on the end where you have to move your hand over like this to try to push through that end grain. So I would put that on my list. I'll give you one more. It's not out, it's in the other bench. We make a 3/16. Willie actually does these for us. So we take the 1/4 inch blank, we offer a 1/16 inch, an 1/8 inch, and a 3/16. So if you really want to go crazy. You can always put a small chisel in a spot, but you can never put the wide chisel in a small spot. So, but again, I don't like having to move a chisel 4 times across the baseline cutting dovetails if I can do it in 2. Every time you do it, you just risk screwing up. So that would be my, what we call bench chisel selection. And then to that, at some point, I would imagine you're going to want to get into mortise chisels. And you need to have a specific mortise chisel for each size. That's the way a mortise chisel works. Good question. Give you 10% of all the sales tonight. Just kidding. Next, Rick.
You're going to have to move through these a little quicker. We got like a million questions.
All right. Well, you're slowing down. I'm ready.
I'm not even talking. All right, this one's from Tim.
Hi, Tim.
In the online workshops, you use a 3/4 dovetail saw for small dovetails. Can the same dovetails be cut using your full-size dovetail saw? And are there any differences between the two?
Yep. The reason I developed that 3/4. Ken, would you go over and grab that? I always like to give Leonard a salute out. You know what I'm talking about? The one over on the wall? No, the one I patterned it after. So I was making a jewelry box for my wife, and little wee small drawers, tiny ones. I think this is actually one of them. They screwed up. So I'm cutting dovetails in a piece of walnut that is maybe not even 3/16 of an inch thick. And, you know, it's sticking up a couple of inches off the bench. And my dovetail saw is making the board go like this. And I remember thinking, I said, shoot, I wish I had a smaller saw for doing this type of work. It's just on with magnets, right, Ken? Oh, no, it's the one on the wall right here. That little tiny one, yeah.
That doesn't say Len Robbie.
No, but that was his saw. That's what we patterned it after. So I got the idea from a friend of mine. His name is John Robichaud. His dad that I knew was Leonard Robichaud. And Leonard, as a young man in 1939, from northern New Brunswick, only spoke French, signed up to go to war, was transferred down here to St. John where nobody spoke French, and he was the only one. And he went over and he fought all the way through the war. He was wounded multiple times, but never severe enough to send him home. And this was his dovetail saw. His name was Leonard Robichaud, Len Robichaud. Just a great guy. You know, one of those World War II heroes. And that was his saw that he had given to John. And I always thought, I said, that's the cutest little saw. I said, I want to make something like that. So we did. So there's our 3/4 saw. The blade is 3/4 the thickness of the regular blade. The length is 3/4 the length. The cutting depth is 3/4 the length, the depth. And on the back side of every one, it's called the Len Robichaud 3/4 saw. So tribute to him. So it's 15 thou on the blade, 2 thou set per side, 19 thou kerf. Has 22 teeth per inch from front to back. But the first 1.5 inches, the teeth are, instead of being filed like this, they're filed back like that. So it allows you that same easy start. And surprisingly, now the grip is, our normal dovetail saw handle is 1 inch. This one's 3/4. And it's surprisingly comfortable, but yeah. Great little saw for doing that fine detail work. And we do it, we pair it up with a crosscut saw as well, small crosscut. And you can just get in. The closer the teeth are to the stiff brass back, the more stable it is. The farther away it is, the more wobble you get like this. So you're not cutting really deep material, so you don't need a lot of blade there. And that makes for a very stable saw. Next, Frick. Love talking about this stuff. Bang, bang, bang.
Sorry, there's just so many to go through. Luther mentioned that he said for 2025, I think he means 2026, but he says we're short about $80,000. So please consider making a donation. The link is pinned to the top of the chat.
It was 2025 short of our budget.
Oh, we were short this year. Okay.
Really?
Well, we're not even into 2026 yet.
No, but he doesn't spend the money if we don't have it. So I think he's planning for, actually get him to clarify that.
Yeah,
Is he talking that our budget for running the 2026 is short 80,000?
I think that's what he means. He said 2025, but I'm pretty sure. I'll let him clarify that. Okay, this one's from the chat. How do you cut shoulders on a tenon if you don't have a crosscut saw?
You can use your dovetail saw because you're using your marking gauge to score it. And the reason you want to use a crosscut saw is because of the way the teeth are shaped. It'll hold the line when you're going across the grain. But you can do it with a dovetail saw. Just score it nice and deep so that you maintain a nice clean line. You're going to get a cleaner line across the grain with a crosscut saw than you would with a rip saw. Remember the little demonstration I did using the chisel? You try to use a chisel like this, going across the grain, and you just get a bunch of tear out. But you do the same thing parallel to the grain, and you get nice, clean little chips, and you end up with a nice, clean kerf. So that's the principle in a nutshell. I'm going to put these away. I want to show you something. I want your opinion. I value your opinion so highly. So we're doing a desk in the online workshop, and it's had a few changes over the time that we've been doing it. Well, we were going to do it all out of ash, and then I asked you guys, and you agreed that it would be nice if it was if the drawer boxes, in other words, all the stuff inside the main desk were a different wood. So we're doing it out of Macassar ebony. And I'm going to pull one out and show it to you because we've got the 2 boxes already built. Ken, can you wheel one of those over? Is it not covered in junk? I put them on carts.
They're both covered in junk.
Well, that's what happens when you have a flat spot. Yeah, wheels are fairly high. I made this new one actually.
While you're wheeling that over, our friend Casper,
Casper, yeah?
he wants to know what your favorite brand of hockey stick is.
I have a friend that has that sells sticks, and it's called Pro Stock. So there's no brand name. And I mean, Jake bought me a stick, $400. What's the company out of Alberta? True. Beautiful stick. Oh my goodness, so light, but it broke within a month. Anyway, so this Pro Stock I use, they're about $120, and I can sometimes get a couple months out of them. So I've been using them for the last probably year and a half. But as a new company, I want to try them because they claim that they're a great stick for the money. I can't remember the name of it. Maybe Jake will speak up.
You said you like the Fisher Price ones.
The Fisher Price, yes, Fisher Price. So, Frick, can you man the camera for a minute?
I can take the camera. What do you want to do?
You just have to be careful of the thing it's attached to. You have to take that with you as well.
Well, how is he going to be able to see this? So here's the question. There's the model, what it looks like. This is going to be, I'm just going to break this, not using it for anything. So this is going to be, you're going to see Macassar ebony on the side of the drawer box. I did the bottom too, even though you never see it. And the grain is going to run like this on the drawer fronts, and it'll be continuous. It'll cover the frame, and it'll cover the drawer. The grain's going to run like this. And then this drawer section is going to be Macassar ebony as well. And I got thinking the other day, I said, shoot, why not do the modesty panel in Macassar ebony? So everything would be what am I trying to say, Ken? Everything would be highlighted or contrasted. So instead of ash here, have Macassar ebony on here, and then it's going to be outlined with that white fiddleback ash. So my question to you is, since this interior is all going to be Macassar ebony, what do you think of the idea of doing the modesty panel out of Macassar ebony as well? I like the idea. Give me some feedback, please. Okay, next, Frick.
Next one's from Sibby.
Sibby, howdy.
He says, David Charlesworth, or sorry, give me a second. I'm going to make sure I read this properly. Okay.
Casper, by the way, is a combat wounded vet from Denmark who was here a couple years ago, and then he came back this year to be my assistant. Great guy, and we haven't done his box. We haven't given his box away yet. We got to get on the ball. Anyway, excellent craftsman and good guy. And Sibby is a pilot with Icelandic Air from Iceland that we met, and he came over and took the class. I can't remember when. His dad was going to come with him, but that didn't work out. Anyway, what's up? What's Sibby saying?
He says the late great David Charlesworth built drawers that would get tighter in the opening when pulling the drawer out to warn the user the drawer was about to end. Can you explain how he did it?
Yeah, he puts. I don't know exactly how, because I think he did it. I think he did it in the case, not in the drawer, which he would have had to, right? Because how could you? Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how he did it. Don't like the idea. David's a friend. I can say that. May he rest in peace. I subscribe to Alan Peters' method of making drawers. What I do is I came up with a cute little idea for a drawer stop. So there's a little toggle in here that you just turn it this way and the drawer comes out. So it means you've got to go and cut a notch in the back. There's a little toggle right here that spins. You line it up, put the drawer back in, reach in there and turn it over, and then your drawer doesn't come out. That to me, because in order for that to get sticky at the end, then at some point you can't have the same fit. Because if the case is shaped like this, wider at the back, narrow at the front, you're not going to get that perfect fit. So I know David talked about that, but I don't ever remember discussing it with him as to how he actually executed it. But for some reason, I do remember something about it being in the case, not in the drawer. I'll look into that and see if I can find something, but yeah, not my preferred not my method.
Right.
Oh, here, I was going to show you this. Did we get a chance to talk about this? We didn't, did we?
No,
Oh,
we didn't know.
Why did you? I get you with the camera, and we never talked about it. How did we? So here's the. How did I get? Oh, if a squirrel runs within 3 miles of me, I get.
Maybe it's because I asked the
distracted.
hockey stick question.
Oh, I knew it was somebody else's fault.
Yep.
So here's a case. This is the one on the left side. So just show you a little bit about this. So it's all made out of Baltic birch. And then, of course, you have to band it. So Macassar ebony here. It's got a solid ebony band right here. Solid ebony band down there in the bottom. So in case you ever ding that corner, actually down here, I want to be able to cut a chamfer on there so it's not a sharp edge. So you're going to cut through the veneer real easy, but you're going to cut into Macassar ebony so there'll be no color change. And I actually put Macassar ebony on the bottom. Don't ask me why. This is going to be screwed to the underside of the underside of the desk. This is going to be screwed to the side of the desk, and these two will help strengthen the joint, which is a miter joint on these corners. On the front, you'll open the drawer by simply, there's going to be a recess cut in the drawer front, top and bottom, and you slip your fingers in here and pull out. So in order to not expose plywood, I inlaid a notch of Macassar because it was going to save me $120 to do this instead of putting a solid piece all the way across on all 8 pieces. This stuff is in excess of $125 a board foot. So I just went through and I made up the drawer fronts. If I had made the drawer fronts on 2 of these banks out of solid Macassar, it was going to cost me in excess of $600. Now, for any of you that are doing the math, you can't just measure this and figure out the board footage and say that's what it costs. No, because every board foot of hardwood that you buy, you're going to waste about 30%, maybe even 40%. So that always has to be figured in. I bought $600 or $700 worth of Macassar, and you look, and in the process of processing some of the pieces, you find cracks and checks in them, and all of a sudden, shoot, I can't use that part of it. So that just comes with the territory. So what I did, I'll grab this before I show you. I couldn't for the life of me throw that kind of money away. Just didn't make sense, and I tend not to be cheap. So remember, even though there's Macassar here, this whole front, including here and this and the drawer front, is going to have the same piece of veneer going all the way across. And there'll just be a fine line right there where that breaks and a fine line surrounding the actual drawer front. But when you close it, it'll look like one piece of wood side to side. So what I did is I took a piece of poplar and I cut a piece of Macassar. Actually, I had to join it, I think. It's because I got to cut dovetails in this, so I had to have the grain running this way. I cut a piece of Macassar about 1.5 inches long by this width. I did a double spline, so there's, in the end grain of this and this, there's a double spline cut to glue these 2 pieces on. Then I glued these 2 pieces on because remember, I have to cut that finger recess both top and bottom. And then this will be sandwiched with a piece of veneer on either side, plus the main piece that goes out here. So this is, I've already done this one. You can see because, I mean, I wasn't being fussy. It's going to be on the inside anyway. It's got a lot of sapwood in it. But this is poplar inside with surrounded by Macassar and then sandwiched. And that's the piece before it's done. Next, Rick.
Did you want to do your little presentation there?
Yeah, how many people are on?
355.
Okay, good. All right, so let me share this with you. Did we find out from Luther where the deficit is? Was he giving figures for paying off 2025 or paying for 2026? I'm almost positive it's 2026 because he wouldn't have gone into debt.
No, but we had money in the bank to start the year. That's the issue. We had money in the bank to start the year, budget.
But we don't have any for, okay. So we started this program 10 years ago, Jake and I, in November of 2016. And if you haven't heard the story, I'll spare you the details now, but got contacted by a combat wounded Marine out of Southern California named Jesse Paratus, stranger to me at the time, looking for one of our saws. This is all done by email. Said he thought we had the best dovetail saw, but he couldn't afford a new one, lived on a small military pension. He said, do you ever have any with cosmetic flaws that you sell at a discount? If you do, and let me know, I'd save up for it. In closing, he said, ever since he got involved in hand tool woodworking, it's the first time he found any peace from the physical and the mental pain he suffers from. Now, I understand that a lot greater today than I did back then. PTSD, traumatic brain injuries, physical injuries, all a result of service, battlefield experience. So I remember saying to Jake, I said, wow, maybe there's something we should be doing for these guys. So we helped Jesse, and then our next class was scheduled for November. And we decided, instead of having 12 paying customers, that we would open up 6 of those spots to combat wounded vet that we would bring in as our guests. And we only had 7 apply. We just put it out on social media. We weren't going to leave one guy out, so we brought in all 7. They were all 7 were American soldiers. Doesn't matter where they're from, as far as I'm concerned. But that didn't know what to expect, but it turned out to be not only an epiphany, but I'm a firm believer that God blesses everybody with talents, skills you can develop, talents you're born with. Some few, some lots. Well, I found out what my talent in woodworking and teaching was designed for, and it was to alleviate the suffering in these soldiers that have sacrificed on our behalf. So we started that class. It was a smashing success in terms of feeling like we're actually doing something to help. And I stay in touch with as many of these guys as I can. So Luther jumped on board, and Woodcraft was a big help, and Super Dave, a lot of people. This is a team effort. Santa Claus, yeah, one of the early, Santa Claus was there at the very beginning and helped me get this started. I was actually bankrupt at the time. We have just finished in October we had our 38th class. So our 39th class will be in April. We've had approximately, I don't know what the exact count is, but 270 soldiers go through the program. I'm looking out the room at the flags that represent the countries we had them from. Ireland, Denmark, Australia, Canada, United States. Majority are from the United States. It's expensive. I think it's over $7,000 now, but 2 years ago, we calculated it was about $350,000 US a year to run the program. I know it's gone up. So we rely on you folks getting the same feeling I had. We have to do something to help these guys. It's our responsibility. Don't wait for the government. Looking behind me, see if there's something I could point out. Here's Jeff O'Connor. Jeff is a combat wounded EOD, stands for Explosive Ordnance Disposal. And that's Jeff in his battle rattle in service. And this is Jeff in the class that he came to, 2019. And he'll tell you, and I'll tell you, it changed his life. It saved his life. And now he's a very happy man. His daughter just graduated. She's now one of the newest constables in the police force in Virginia Beach. Jeff has several businesses, one being a woodworking business, and his wife, Kim, the same. Son's going to school, wanting to be an orthopedic surgeon. And we've featured him a lot of times. That's one example of how this has helped. And I wouldn't stop talking. Danny Bell, another one that comes to mind. It's a bunch of them. All right. So this came to us. Philip Burns. I'm going to read it mostly so that I don't miss anything, but this is a tribute to Lance Corporal Victor Burns. I want to give a special shout out to Philip Burns of Arkansas, who donated $7,000 to the Purple Heart Project in memory of his older brother, Lance Corporal Victor Burns. This donation, he asked, it would pay for a full scholarship in 2026 for a selected Marine, because Victor was a Marine. And we get, of the 4 branches, most of the guys are Army. Second most would be Marine, followed by Air Force and Navy. So you Air Force, Navy guys got to up your game. Just a little about Victor. Victor was drafted into the military after graduating high school and chose the Marines because he had an uncle he had admired that had been a Marine. After finishing boot camp, Victor was sent to language school to learn Vietnamese. He joined his unit in Vietnam in June of 1967, who was assigned to a large Marine combat base in southern Vietnam called Cosman. The North Vietnamese had surrounded and besieged the Marines in Quezon. Supplied and reinforced from the air, the Marines fought a long, tough fight from 21 January to 9 July. This is 1967. U.S. Command initially believed that the combat operations around Quezon were part of a series of a minor PAVN, which I don't know what it means, offensive in the border regions. But soon the base was surrounded, and one of the most famous Marine battles of the Vietnam era was on. In the ensuing 5 months, Quezon was subject to daily artillery, mortar, rocket attacks, and several infantry assaults. More than 274 U.S. troops were killed and more than 2,500 wounded. To support the besieged Marines, the U.S. dropped over 114,810 tons of bombs and fired over 158,900 artillery rounds. U.S. forces lost 4 cargo planes and 35 helicopters, with 23 aircraft and 123 helicopters damaged. Victor had only been in Quezon for 10 days before he was killed by an enemy mortar round on the night of June 27th, 1967. At midnight on the 27th, mortars and rockets attacked Quezon base. Victor's unit launched an attack up the ridges southeast of Quezon to eliminate the NVA mortars and rockets. A total of 27 Marines from Victor's regiment were killed that day in Quezon. Thank you, Philip, for your generous donation to PHP in memory of your older brother, Lance Corporal Victor Burns. Huge salute, and thank you. And now the challenge. And so great that Philip did this, because I think this is great. If you have a close relative, someone who has a special spot in your heart, and they didn't necessarily have to die, but if they served and you would like to commemorate their service, what better way of doing it than helping us bring one of these combat wounded vets? Most of these guys show up with suicide as part of the game plan because they can't handle it. I don't know anything about that. I didn't experience it. But I can't imagine what you had to have seen, what you had to have do or witnessed that was so bad that the only solution you can see is to take your own life. Well, we all know that just passes the pain on to another group of people. So better than that, let's find them something. Apparently this is called distractive therapy. It gives them something to do that occupies 100% of their consciousness, their hands, their eyes, maybe even their ears. They get into cutting dovetails, time stops. They're just totally engrossed. We not only give them the training and the ongoing training with the membership, the online workshop, we send them home with the tools that they need to literally build furniture with hand tools, as well as a bench. And then from there, it's up to them. And a lot of them have taken it and really run with it. Several have started businesses as a means of helping to support themselves. So please consider doing that. I would love to stand here every 2 weeks and read another letter like that from one of you that said, you know what, I need to do that. I will support one. So that's my little speech for you. Take it and run with it, please. Next, Frick.
All right, next one comes from In It A Bit, is the username.
In It A Bit?
In It A Bit.
Okay.
For my first Spokeshave, should I have a flat or curved?
Flat. Curves are hard to use because you're never going to get a curved that perfectly matches the radius you're working on. So you have such a small area to register the tool on. They're difficult. And you can do an inside curve with a flat to a certain radius. So definitely you're going to get a lot more use out of a flat than you are curved. Ken, if you're a combat wounded vet that has been to our program, any one of those 38 classes, we'd love to hear from you. Rob White, I got a Christmas message from Rob White the other day, and Rob was in that very first class in November of 2016. If you happen to be on tonight, Rob, Happy New Year, brother. So if you've been in any of our classes, please put a note in the chat. How does we do it?
At
Ken, and tell us your name and what class you were in, and we'll give you a shout out. We'd love to do that. Next, Frick.
Okay, next one comes from Cap21.
Howdy, Cap.
How do you make your square bench dogs pop up?
How do I make my what?
Square bench dogs pop up.
I push on them.
There you go.
That is longer than this is deep. So when it's flush here, it's sticking out about an inch down below, so I just push up from below. I should have come up with something magical. They just come up on their own. No, they don't. I can reach underneath and grab them. Which usually it's in my way. I keep my shooting board right underneath here. I put a tray in, and I always have to make sure that's up so it doesn't jam my thumb. Next.
From Stan.
Stan?
He says, the back of my chisels always seem to have a convex curve in the last eighth of an inch. Is this me not doing it right?
Yes. What are you actually doing? Well, if you have any of those chisels that I mentioned, where the back transitions into some form of another shape, see if I can, here's a Lee Nelson. I showed you the Wood River. I'll bring that out again. These are the only two that I have, but both of these have a socket that sits down lower than the back. So when you're working on your stone, as I said, you're moving it back and forth. You can't just stay in one spot, because if you just kept doing this, you'll leave a ridge right there on the back. So while you're doing this, you've got to be moving forward and back to make that transition, somewhere back in here. And if you accidentally slide over, now you're actually raising up your chisel. You wouldn't notice it, you wouldn't feel it, because it's so subtle. But what you've done is you've raised it up. Now you're wearing away the front edge, and that's no longer flat. So that's most likely what has happened. How do you fix that? Oh boy. How I would fix it? I'd get another chisel, because there's just way too much work. And if you've made a mistake at the end, unless it's just a little bit, you could possibly grind your primary bevel back. If it's any amount, you got to take all that material. If you've done that to the last eighth of an inch, then you got to take all of this material to get down to there. I'd spend $100 and go get another chisel, to be honest with you, but turn that one into a pig sticker or something. Next, Frick.
This one's from Tom.
Hi, Tom.
How do you prevent thin shavings from clogging up your dust collector?
Oh, well, I don't. We got a big enough dust collector now that it doesn't. But I know when we used to use a vacuum cleaner, those thin shavings will go in there and they get all wrapped around. Yeah, it's a pain. You're probably best just to not suck thin shavings up into your dust collector. Put them in a pile. It's pretty easy to go with your fingers and grab all of those and put them in the garbage manually. But yeah, it's like sucking up those long, thin strings. Yeah, well, even that Cyclone vacuum we have, the thin shavings get all wrapped around in there. Yeah. Not a reason to go to sanding, but one and the only downside to hand planing. Next, Frick.
This one's from Scott Blau,
Hey, Scott.
PHP Class 37. I built my first wood hinge box last month. I made it 6 long by 3 wide by 3 tall. It came out well. I was wondering what sizes and or ratios you recommend.
Well, the golden ratio is 2.1. Well, I can't even remember. But you know what I do? I no longer pay attention to that. I'll sit there when I'm about to make a box, and I'm using my hands like this, and say, I want it to be about this wide and this long. And you'll just get to a point where that shape looks just right, and that one's not quite. So Kyle over in Newfoundland, Kyle sent us a box to give away one time. He made a nice wood hinge dovetailed box. It was made out of wangi and walnut. I think it was wangi and walnut. It was black and brown. I think so.
Golden ratio is 1 to 1.618, isn't it?
That sounds better. That would be length and width, or width and length. Anyway, whatever he did, it just was perfect. It just had the most pleasing shape. So take a block of styrofoam, Get a block of styrofoam and just cut it on the bandsaw until you get a shape that really looks right. Don't trust the book, don't trust what somebody else says. Go by what you think looks just right. And then it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. But yeah, if I had time, I'd run down there and I'd grab one that I really like. Sometimes I hit it, sometimes I don't. But yeah, just get a block of styrofoam and cut it and play with it until you get it just with the perfect size, and then just copy it. It's always easy. Always work with models or mock-ups. So much better than screwing up something good. Next, Frick.
This is from Mike.
Hey, Mike.
When making a desk, how do you make the feet so that the desk does not wobble on the floor?
Well, you can buy levelers, which is a threaded insert that goes up in. That's probably what I'll do, because the upstairs where this is going is not level at all. So they're low profile, so you don't really see them. But there's a threaded insert that goes up into the wood, and then you get a little round foot with a threaded rod on it, and you just use that to level it up. Then you don't have to cut into the wood. That's the best way to do it. And they're usually steel with rubber on the bottom so they don't scratch the floor. Any furniture supply? Next, Frick.
Richard in the chat.
Hey, Richard.
When using my 5.5 on the shooting board, can you camber the blade for shooting? I use a camber blade for face planing.
No, I'm not a camber guy. David Charlesworth was. I prefer a blade. I'm much more in the Ian Kirby camp, where the blade is straight from there to there, and the outside edges are just ever so lightly feathered off with a little bit, 3 seconds of work on all the pressure on one corner, just on your 16,000 grit stone. If a cambered blade, what he's referring to is that it is literally shaped like this, which if you like that, fine. But on a shooting board, you want it straight, right? You're trying to get an edge that when you put a square on it, it's coming off perfectly square to that face. So I would keep my blade edge straight on my plane. If you want to camber it for wide stuff, then you can go ahead. David will be happy. Next, Frick.
It's from Jeremy.
Hey, Jeremy.
Yeah, okay. Why do you not strope or strop your after honing your tools? Almost every other video on sharpening uses a strop.
Well, I'll give you 2 reasons. The first one makes the most sense. Yeah, I have a video called 32 Seconds to Sharp. Luther will leave a link in there. And it takes 32 seconds to go from dull to sharp. Once you put that blade back in the plane and you plane a piece of wood, you are going to feel that wood and you're going to say, wow, I couldn't make that better, to where I could feel the difference or see the difference. So you work until, I tell the guys when I teach the class, I said, you have to make that dovetail as good as you can see improvement. So if you make a dovetail and you can see a little gap, okay, you can do better than that. If you make a dovetail and you can't see a gap without magnifiers, well then why bother? You're not going to walk around with magnifiers on. So you go until your eye or hand can no longer tell the difference. If 32 seconds will produce an edge that leaves me a surface that by my hand and my eye standards, it says it's flawless, why would I do anything else to that, like stropping? What I don't love, that's reason number 1, and it's really the only reason I need. Reason number 2 is when you strop, it has a tendency to round over that edge, because you're stropping like this with leather and abrasive. It's not a hard back surface. It's okay for a knife, but not a chisel and not a plane blade. Now I'm just looking for a plane blade so I can demonstrate something. So here's my plane blade. I want that edge to be straight. Straight is defined as the shortest distance between 2 points. I want that edge to be straight as you look at it from here to here, minus the little feathering. I want it to be straight when you look this way. I don't want it to not be straight. And by doing this with a strop, ever so microscopically, you're going to do that. go back to my first answer. If 32 seconds will produce an edge that you can't tell how it could possibly get any better, then why go 1 second more? And that I'm sticking with. Next trick, please. A lot of times in woodworking, I've found over the, I was making woodworking things that I would give to my grandmother before I went to school, 5 years old. My father was a shop teacher. I grew up with tools. I did this all of my life. So I can almost say I've got close to 60 years under my belt. And I have come to realize that so many people do what they do because they were told to do it. And I've always been the type that, okay, I'll do it. I'll always grateful, never satisfied. So I'm not satisfied that you tell me that this is a way to do it. I'm not satisfied with that until I prove to myself that there isn't a better way. And fortunately, because of that, we have come up with the offset method for cutting dovetails. We came up with that idea in 2014 and inspired by Ernest Joyce in his book, The Encyclopedia of Furniture Making, written in 1971. That technique has allowed 70 and 80 and even 90-year-olds to cut dovetails and have them put them beside mine, and you can't tell them apart. When we teach a class, Tuesday's Dovetail Day, I can usually pick up 6, 7, 8 dovetails off of the benches and walk around with mine and theirs, and most people can't tell which is which. So how do you argue with that? So remember, always grateful, never satisfied. Next, Frick.
Adam in the chat.
That bit of advice came from Bob Proctor, by the way.
I just bought your dovetail marking knife to use with my Lee Nielsen saw. It's a bit tight in the curve. Is there any issue if I stone the knife to make it slightly thinner?
No, stone it. Stone it. You want it to be able to fit just right. Your dovetail saw starts off with what should be 26 thou. It's a Lee Nielsen. But as you sharpen and use it, those teeth are going to wear away a little bit, and it's going to get a little bit smaller over time. So, yeah. In fact, I'm actually toying with the idea of having my blade no set on my dovetail marking knife blade and have it fit in that kerf just perfectly. So when you drag it through, it is an exact mark from the kerf in the tailboard. Let you know how I do with that. I'll probably have to start with the Lee Nielsen one, which is the 26 thou, and get it down to 24 thou by taking the set off both sides. I'll let you know. I'll experiment. Next, Frick.
I just finished my first wood hinge box today, and I used boiled linseed oil. What do you recommend for how many coats to use, and what wax finish do you use?
You know what? I've been down that road for so many years, and used everything. Never 100% happy. I always thought, oh. I remember trying to spray them, and if you use a regular spray gun, it would blow the boxes over. And I got a little tiny detail sprayer, but that clogs up and just whatever. So, and I went to oil. I love tongue oil, but you're talking about putting on a coat, waiting a day, putting on another coat, waiting a day. You need at least 3, if not 4 or 5 coats to get any kind of buildup on it. This is Renaissance wax. Now, it's expensive. This little can is $30 some odd. But you read the label and it says 1 coat, put it on, wipe it off. 3 coats are no better than 1 coat, so it only needs 1 coat. It leaves a beautiful finish to the touch, especially going on a hand plane surface. So you literally wipe it on and then wipe it off. That's all there is to it. And it gives moderate protection, but you're not taking these things underwater. So for things that are just going to be handled, it's fantastic. You find it on our site, Renaissance Wax. And don't be shocked at the price because it's not cheap, but it is good. Next, Rick.
Do you recommend any particular corner clamps for making drawers and boxes?
Corner clamps, I know what you're talking about. No, I don't. And I'm not saying anything bad or good either way. If you don't have anybody to help you and it works for you, great. But I've never needed them. And maybe because I came up with some other idea, or what's that expression about mother of all invention? Necessity is the mother of invention. something like that. Yeah,
Necessity is an art of invention.
necessity is the mother of invention. So, no, I haven't used them. I don't really have an opinion either way, but when you're working by yourself, it is nice to have a second set of hands around, and if that works, then go ahead for it, do it. Next, Frick.
I'm planning to build a workbench top from rough hard maple. I'd like my top to be as knot-free as possible, like yours. What advice can you give me?
By wood that doesn't make knots. Well, this is made up of. This is made up of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 pieces, and this is the edge. So it's you can have one that's got a knot in the middle, but you can still cut it so that there's no knot on the edge. So one of the advantages of doing it like that, I think it's going to be more stable. And each one of these pieces, I hand planed the edge so that it was square and smooth before I put it together. I marked it with an arrow, so the grain's running that way. And that allowed me to do every one of those pieces and line the arrows up, so I know when it came time to refinishing this, I'd be planing in the same direction for all of them. The other thing I did is I used a double spline. So there's a spline, there's two splines in between each joint. And that's not to strengthen the joint, it's for alignment purposes. And it worked out so well that after it was all glued up, literally all I had to go in was just plane the glue off. The pieces were flush. One spline's not enough. It'll always move a little bit. 2 splines, and if each one of these boards was 3 inches, this is for you. So each one of these boards might be 3 1/4 inches. So let's say it was 3 1/4. So here's one of these boards. This is the face. This is what's being glued. So I cut a spline here and here. So the same setting on the table saw. You cut your spline, flip it over, cut your spline, then put this edge against it, cut your spline. As long as those pieces are all the same width, your spline's going to be in the same spot on all of them. And the farther away those 2 splines are, the more stable it's going to be. If you put 2 splines like this, one there and one there, well, that's going to allow a little bit of this. But by moving them apart so they're out here, that's almost a guarantee. And of course, your spline has to fit in there with no wiggle. And I'll give you one more tip. So I glued the splines in place on one piece. On each joint, the splines were glued in place before I assembled. So I didn't have to worry about getting glue down into that groove and the opposite groove. That's all of this is on my online workshop, one of the first big projects, 70 some odd episodes. 170 some episodes, wasn't it, Frick?
Oh, yeah.
Next.
This one's from Dave. When polishing the chisel back, how do you get the mirror finish that you have on yours? I've polished up to 10,000 grit, and my backs are cloudy.
Well, we start. It's a little bit tough. I should say the part that's tough is knowing when have I finished with this grit and I can move to the next one. So until you start getting a polish, the only thing that changes is the shade of the gray. So you start off with your 1000, and that's the one where you have to do most of the work. The 1000 is designed to flatten and remove original grinding scratches. And a lot of times people will leave that grit too soon, and they don't find out their error until they get all the way to the end, and they can still see scratches, and that's remnant of the original 1000 grit, or factory scratches. So the best I can tell you, without having you here in a class, which would be the best option, by the way, remind me to mention that, Ken. Before you leave your 1,000, you want the entire chisel area that you're working on to be the same shade of gray. And then when you think it is, go do another 5 minutes. Then you're going to move to your next. Now, if you want to do it the best way, not necessarily the cheapest, but the best, go 1,000, remove all factory scratches, get it flat. Then go to 4,000. Use the 4,000 to remove all the 1,000 scratches, making sure that you don't go more than a minute of work without stopping and reflattening your stones. You'll pay for it if you don't. When you've got the new 4,000 grit shade of gray, you then move to your 6,000 or your 8, either or, and you remove the 4,000 scratches and you replace them with the new 8,000 scratches. Now you're going to start to get a bit of shine. And then you go from 8 to 16, you use the 16 to get rid of all the 8. Now that uses 4 stones. You can start with 1, go to 6, go to 16, means that you're going to go a little more work because you got to go from 1 all the way to 6, and then you got to go from 6 all the way to 16 instead of having those extra spots in there to help remove the scratches. But it's a process. You may have to do it a couple of times, and if you get to the end and you still see scratches, you don't keep going on the 16. You got to go all the way back to the whatever was used to get rid of those coarse scratches. In this case, probably the 1,000 grit. And I always hated telling people that when they would come to me with a nice shiny 16,000 grit, represents an hour and a half of work, but I can still see original factory scratches. You got to go all the way, start over. But you know what? You only have to do it once, so you got to do it right. And if you don't have Shaptons, get Shaptons. We sell them. We have that diamond plate that makes that Shapton system very affordable, and that stuff will do you well. Yeah, by the way, the other problem I should mention, if your stones aren't flat, then you're never going to get that mirror polish. It won't come. And if you're not paying enough money for your stones, you're probably dealing with stuff that's not flat. I hate to say that, but quality and price don't escape each other. It's the way it is. Next, Frick.
This one's from Carlos.
Hey, Carlos.
For a small router plane, for your small router plane that you showed on your YouTube shorts, does it matter if it's open or closed throat?
No, I don't even know what mine is. I presume mine is considered open. And I've seen the other one and wouldn't make any difference. Nope. Ken, anybody to say hello to?
Yeah.
Oh, here we go. What?
You may want to come over here because you don't have a mic.
So these are, we're gonna give a shout out to the vets that are on tonight that have been in our previous classes. We're gonna test my memory.
Casper.
Casper over in Denmark, bud.
Scott.
Happy New Year.
Scott Blau, PHP 37.
Scott, Happy New Year.
Brian June, PHP 35.
Brian, Happy New Year, brother.
Nanya. Nanya's on.
Nanya is our newfie who made a wrong turn somewhere and ended up in BC. Kyle misses you so. Happy New Year's, Nanya.
Darren Egan.
Oh, by the way, Nanya, what's his name was in here the other day? We were talking about you. Who is the J2F? Jay calls him Two Spirit from Fredericton. Oh shoot. He came back to be my assistant and had to leave halfway through because his dad got really sick in Montreal. Oh. Sold his motorcycle too. Anyway, I'll think of it in a minute, but you know who I'm talking about.
Okay, and the only other one right now is Darren Egan, PHP 37.
Darren over in the UK. Happy New Year, brother. Oh, it's killing me when I can't remember someone's name. Shoot.
Ready?
Anyway, he went in the RCMP for a short period of time. Yep.
All right, next one's from Alan.
Hi, Alan.
You often credit Tay Frid for his contributions to woodworking. he was a big fan of bow saws. Have you considered adding bow saws to your line of saws?
I made a couple of bow saws after spending time with Tay in the summer of '87, but you know, I got to say this nicely and respectfully. So, Tay is from Denmark, and in a time period when the woodwork you did was to satisfy the average person's needs for furniture. So today, the only people that are buying craftsman-made furniture are people who appreciate the artistry in wood and are willing to pay the money and know what they're looking at. The general market could care less. They don't even know boards come from trees. So in Tay's day, and I'm saying this based on how he did certain things, it's if you had 10 dovetails and 8 of them fit well and 2 didn't, so what? It's still going to stay together. That would not stand up to scrutiny by fanatics like myself, but when you're satisfying the general population, it's perfectly normal. So, what was the question? I got drifted.
Are you planning on adding bow saws to your...
So Tay would use a bow saw for speed, and Frank Klaus as well. So no, I'm not a. I made them, yeah, but no, I'm not a fan of them. So no, I love my dovetail saw. I love my crosscut saw. This is new. We're start making these. These are just a bench saw. So same thickness saw plate, 35 thou. Little finer crosscut teeth or a little finer rip teeth, but something you could use at the bench. And if you need to cut dovetails, like in a bench like this, where you don't have the reach with the dovetail saw, you could actually go in and cut them with this. So watch for that in the near future. Redesign the handle, and yeah, there's a need for it because I want one. Next, Fred.
Okay, we're gonna have to wrap it up probably a little earlier. I'm getting red on the camera.
Oh, meaning the battery's dying.
For battery, yeah. Wasn't fully charged. When making piston fit drawers and fitting the front and the back, how tight do you fit the front and the back?
I fit them never tight top to bottom. You have to have seasonal movement. But ideally, I shoot for them to be touching on the sides. If you can move it side to side and detect any movement, it doesn't fit. That's not the way it's supposed to fit. No side to side movement. A little bit up and down, but nothing side to side. It literally wants to ride the sides in and out. I want to give a big shout out to Angie and Lynn, and I want to thank them for the wonderful Christmas present. Those chocolate bars that you sent me lasted a day. Ken got into them.
So did I.
Angie, Ken ate my chocolate bar. Thank you, ladies. Hope you had a wonderful Christmas, and hope you have a beautiful New Year.
All right, next one's from S. Mill. Can I clean my Trend diamond stones with denatured alcohol when I'm done sharpening before I put it away?
I don't know why. I would just clean it with water. If you want to use a toothbrush, if you get some of... Oh, no, actually, you can buy just use a little eraser. A pencil eraser will get that stuff off, or those things that they use to clean sanding belts. Anything like that will get that off. I would just rinse it. The only thing you can do to harm that is to let it rust. So don't put it away wet. Next, Rick.
Todd from the chat. Is there a way to keep Hadouk from bleeding onto lighter colored woods?
No, that's a real pain. Oh, it's a pain. Yeah, if you're using that with a light colored wood, and even when applying the oil, it's amazing how that color bleeds over. I don't know. I never found the secret to it to keep it from happening. Bentley's out there.
Yeah. 15 yesterday.
Yes, my oldest grandson Bentley had his birthday yesterday, the 26th. You know, that's the one where you get all those presents and say Merry Christmas and Happy Birthday too. That's why I was asked to be born in July.
Okay, Manitou in the chat.
Hey, Manitou.
Why not use MDF core in your drawer front and veneer the MDF so your drawer front stays perfectly flat?
Why not use MDF core in your drawer front? Read that again for me, please.
Why not use MDF core in your drawer front and veneer the MDF so your drawer front stays perfectly flat?
Oh, your drawer front won't move. Your drawer front literally has dovetails on both sides, and the dovetails prevent that board from moving. So that's why you don't have to worry. That's why you could get away with veneering just one side, and you don't have to worry about it because you have literally got dovetails that are holding that. You will never have a bow in your drawer front if you have dovetails on either side. Next, Rick.
Luther clarified the donation thing.
And
He said we did not take in $350,000 for 2025. We had to dip into savings to make up the difference. So
it was 2025 that we were short.
yep.
Yeah. We still paid everything. Because we had
But-
some money in the bank left over from 2024, carried forward.
But that's
But we wanted to raise.
tapping our cushion.
Yeah.
Well, we got to do better, guys. Come on, this is too important. And I know if you have extra money, then just give it. If you don't have extra money and you want to get extra money, give it. The more you give, the more you receive. It's as simple as that. But faith precedes the miracle, which means you got to do it first, and then once you've stepped out and exercised some faith, it'll be returned. It's amazing. I learned to live my life that way. Give it when you can't afford to. Next, Rick.
Okay, this one's from the chat. I'm buying lumber. I generally buy 30 millimeter thick, and then I resaw it to 12 millimeter thick. But the two 12 millimeter panels always bow or cups.
Oh, they will.
Is
Yep.
there something unusual going on, or do you have any tips for something fundamental that I'm missing?
No, it'll always happen. And I know this, and I've learned this over the years. And every once in a while, I think, oh, I don't want to waste that wood. I can get a 1/4 inch piece off of there. It's impossible. It's impossible to cut a wide board in half and not have the two move. Wood has internal stress. That's why if you want the most stable piece of wood, you take the same amount off both sides to get your finished piece in the middle. You take more from one side or the other, you'll always upset that apple cart, and things are going to move on you. So you can't do it. And I tried. I keep trying, and I'll probably try again. By the way, if I happen to lose you because the camera goes out, have a happy new year. We'll see you in January. I appreciate your support. We'll try to give you good content. Make you smarter woodworkers.
It just went out, but they can still hear you. So wrap it up now.
So we have no more visual?
No video, but they
Oh.
can hear you.
Well, give me some more. Has you got more questions? They don't have to see me to.
Well, it just has an error message on the screen, so you should wrap it up. Okay, see if you can answer this one. This is the last question I received anyway. Hey Rob, I'm an apprentice building my final piece. I want to build a cabinet with Cooper doors
Cooper doors, yeah.
out of ash. How would you keep the doors from deflecting or warping?
Well, first thing you do is you start with stable lumber, which means you bring it in, you pre-cut the pieces and you let them sit in the area that they're going to be for as long as it takes. And that's kind of a vague way of saying it. Weigh them with a very precise scale and keep weighing them, and don't use them until it starts to bounce. They weigh a little bit more one day, a little less the next. Then they've reached equilibrium with the surrounding environment. Use straight grain lumber so that will lessen the chance it's going to move. Pray a lot. And when you're dealing with a live material like wood, a lot of times it's just luck of the draw. You can do as much as you can do, but you're always subject to the fact that this is live material, has a mind of its own, and it may do something that I did not expect and didn't want, but it happened anyway. So whenever I cut drawer fronts for something, I always cut a few extra, drawer sides, sorry, and you let them sit for a while, because if you've got 10 pieces cut and you need to use 8, there's always going to be 2 that moved a little bit, and I'm pulling those numbers out arbitrarily. But always cut more than you need so that you can high grade and get rid of any that moved. Yeah.
You asked me to remind you about something. You were talking about flattening chisels, and then you said something about sharpening and coming up, and something about a class, and you said remind me.
Oh, yeah. So if you're still with us, our class dates were released for 2026, starting in April. I'm pretty sure there's still room in all of them, but I think somewhere around 70% of them have been sold. So there's still options to get in. And why would you come? Well, we'll catapult your skills about 5 years ahead of where you'll get on your own. It's a brutal class. We go from 7:30 in the morning till, we're often here till 10 o'clock at night. We stop teaching at 8:30, but we're still here to work. And we do that for 6 days. Includes all your food, best food you'll ever eat. And the camaraderie is second to none. You get to rub shoulders with some of the world's finest when it comes to soldiers who have given a huge sacrifice for the population. Anyway, join us. We're in New Brunswick, in Grand Bay, New Brunswick. You can fly into Bangor, Maine, or either of our airports, St. John or Fredericton. If you need more details, there's tons of them on the website. And we even rent tools. So if you don't want to drag your tools with you, you can rent tools for the week. Have everything you need.
All right, wrap it up.
Okay, we're cutting it a little bit early because somebody forgot to charge the battery. But hope you had a lovely Christmas. Wish you a happy new year. We'll be in touch in January. And please, if you can find room in your bank and in your heart and in your faith, help us with this challenge of taking care of these combat wounded soldiers. And please spread the word too of what we do so that those who need it can apply. Thank you. See you all next year.